Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tips from Recent College Applicants. I'm so delighted to have you all here. So as everyone's coming in tonight, we've got a quick poll for you, just so that we can get an idea of where you're coming from, what grade you're in, and how we can help you shine. So just let us know what kind of population you're from, and we'll be able to get started. So that'll be up for just a couple minutes. And in the meantime, thank you all so much again for coming. My name is Jenna Burke. I am a tutor at Appleruth. I'm also the tutor manager for Appleruth in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I'm the educational consultant account manager for DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So I wear a bunch of different hats in the company, but my favorite part is working with students like these wonderful ones that we have tonight. So just in case you're unfamiliar with Appleruth, our why is to help change students' self-beliefs so that they can change their lives, which makes it a really worthwhile and, for me, heartwarming endeavor working with students and helping them achieve what they want to get to. And so we do this 3 different ways. We've got academic tutoring. So for those of you who just survived your AP season, this is where we can help you. We've also got test prep, so SAT, ACT, and executive function coaching. If you feel like your study habits and control of time and organization are a little bit out of control, we can help you there as well. But most importantly, I would love to introduce to you our panelists. So today with us, we've got Ellie Nordland, who has committed to Dickinson College, Tyler Kadivar, who is going to Rice University, Lily Kirsten, who's going to Colorado College, and Timmy Parsons, who is going to Yale University. So I'll just give you a quick introduction about everybody, and then we're going to dive on in. So Ellie is from Alexandria, Virginia. She is thinking about being either pre-med or maybe psychology at Dickinson College, maybe combining them in some way. And she loves playing soccer, painting, watching TV, definitely a strong recommend for dairy girls, and hanging out with her friends and her many adorable pets. Tyler is from Bradenton, Florida, and he's thinking about studying astrophysics at Rice University. But if that doesn't pan out, maybe mechanical engineering or ancient Mediterranean civilizations, which I happen to know he is an expert at. And in his spare time, he likes playing video games and hanging out with friends. Lily is from Vienna, Virginia, and at Colorado College, she's thinking about majoring in biology, probably pre-med, and hopefully minoring in art because she is a wonderful ceramicist. And she also enjoys running track and cross country, hanging out with her friends and her dogs. And lastly, Timmy is joining us. He's from Eugene, Oregon. He's going to Yale. He's been recruited for rowing. And in fact, if you're wondering why Timmy is out amongst the trees, he is actually at his regional championships to qualify for nationals in rowing, but he didn't want to miss out. So he is just that committed. So we're delighted that he can join us today. He also enjoys cycling and hanging out with friends. So if you've got any questions for our student panel, please drop them in the Q&A and we will definitely answer them as we go. But for right now, I've got some questions to start us off. So panelists, how did you embark on your college search? How did you start? It almost feels overwhelming. There are hundreds and hundreds of colleges in the US and abroad. How did you get started? So let's start with Lily.
Hi. So I started most of my college search using the College Board, like college search tool, just because I was already familiar with that. And my school like kind of taught us a little bit of how to use that. And so when I was first like looking, just kind of getting like a broad kind of idea of what I wanted, I found that really helpful because I could like kind of put in different sizes of colleges and like different, I don't know, they have like a bunch of different filters and stuff. And so that was really helpful to kind of get a big list. And then when I was narrowing it down, I don't know if all schools have this, but my school had Naviance. And so that gave me a really good idea of like, it showed kind of like a graph of the kids at my school, they're like GPAs and SATs, and if they got in, if they were waitlisted, or if they got rejected. And so that was kind of better for me in the final stages of my college process, because I was able to figure out what would be some reach schools and some like good fit schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because where you are and what students at your school are also going through is definitely something that admissions officers are paying attention to. So that can be a really great way of narrowing your list. Yeah, absolutely. Tyler, I would love to hear from you. I saw a little bit of a head nod about Naviance, so that might be something that was helpful for you.
Yeah, so my school also has Naviance. So for me initially, when I kind of deformed my list, I kind of just went through and I thought, okay, I'm just going to go for, I guess, the big name schools. What are kind of some really good schools I know of? And then I went through and I knew what I kind of wanted out of a college, like kind of what programs I wanted. And so I kind of would look through and be like, okay, they don't really have a program, for astronomy or astrophysics, or it's kind of a really small thing. And so that really helped narrow it down. And then of course, stuff like Naviance and kind of looking at stats and being like, okay, realistically, do I have a chance of getting in? And then kind of using that to balance my list. So I had, a couple solid, schools I'm more confident to get into, and then some more reach schools so that, I had somewhere I could go that I was happy with.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing that you have such a specialized interest, like there aren't going to be many schools that are like, yes, we have a very strong and interesting astrophysics program, right? So that can, having a really strong interest can also really help to narrow that down. Let's see, Ellie and then Timmy.
Hi, so yeah, my school also had things like Naviance. We also had College Kickstart. So those two things were very helpful. For me, it was a little unique just because I was going through like recruiting for soccer. So for me, I started off just kind of looking at what I was looking for in a college, both academically and athletically. So I had like a pretty big list going at the beginning, obviously. And it was kind of just like reaching out to coaches for the most part for me, and then kind of seeing from there what kind of like response I was getting from those schools, but also keeping in mind that I was also wanting to look for certain things academically in schools as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll definitely dig in a little bit more about what it's like to be a recruited athlete. But I'd love to hear from our other, spoiler alert, recruited athlete, Timmy. So what was your college search like? Did you know from the beginning that you were looking to be recruited?
Yeah, I kind of like come summer going into junior year, I knew I like wanted to kind of get recruited for rowing. So I just started like reaching out to schools and kind of same thing as Ellie, just like seeing like what schools like me back and like which programs were interested. And then like as like the season for rowing progressed, like and as like I tried to like get like more what the coaches wanted, like what they're asking for, like more what programs we're interested in. That kind of helped me narrow down my search. And then once I had kind of a list of schools for rowing, I looked into each academics and narrowed it down from there and like what I was interested in, and like also like location, like is this somewhere where I'm going to want to like live for the next like 4 like plus years of my life. And so I thought that was super important, just making sure like I was going to be like happy where I go and not just going there just for like what just the rowing is or just for the school. So I thought that was really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times students don't necessarily think about like the location of the school, right? You're thinking like, oh, the school has this program I really like, or I really like that they, students that go here tend to like go on to these different types of careers. But if you really want a campus and you're looking at a school that's like, say, in the heart of New York City, then that may end up not being the most satisfying experience for you. Fantastic. Thank you. All right. The Q&A is starting to get busy. So if you have a question for our panelists, remember, drop it in the Q&A and we will definitely get to it. So I'd love to talk about college visits. All right. So thankfully, this was a very different year for college visiting than the students 1 year ahead of you. A lot more colleges were actually open to visiting, but a lot of colleges were still taking advantage of the fact that people were interested in viewing them online. So I'd love to know, what was it like to be able to visit the campus? I believe all of you were able to visit at least one college before you applied, before you were accepted. So I'd love to hear, what was it like to be on those visits? What kind of things did you notice? What did you find yourself responding to? And what was it like trying to imagine yourself living on those campuses? So let's start with Ellie. What are your thoughts on this? And then we'll do Timmy.
Yeah, so for me, I went on a tour with like the soccer coach, obviously at Dickinson. But something that was really important for when I was going on this tour was kind of seeing how like the students were interacting with each other and kind of getting a sense for how like just like the campus felt like on a normal day. I also paid attention to kind of like just the different academic programs that some of the like student panelists that I got to meet with, like what they were involved in, just to see kind of what student life was like. Because although I was focused on like the athletic aspect, I just think that you have to be realistic with the fact that this will be the next 4 years of your life, and I think that like the student life is something that you need to kind of pay attention to.
100%. Yeah. I remember I went and visited a college that shall remain nameless. And I'd actually been accepted before I visited. So this was my chance to be like, okay, I actually got in. Do I even like it here? And I remember walking around and talking to students, and they were all sort of universally like, oh yeah, I really like it here. I mean, it's so much work, but I really like it. And I was just like, oh, I don't know. I just was really working really hard in high school. I was taking all these really hard classes, and I want to be somewhere where people are working hard, but they also don't seem like stressed out 24/7. So I don't think I would have known that if I hadn't visited and gotten a feel for the student body. So yeah, couldn't agree more, Ellie. Timmy, what were your college visits like for you?
Yeah, I went on a few official visits, and when I went, I was just like, I'd already visited a few other schools, and I was kind of seeing how like the team interacted with each other at first, and then kind of how like the student body, like I said, like interacted with each other. Like if it was like if everyone seemed kind of like happy or like down, and I just wanted to see if like it was somewhere where I was gonna enjoy like being there. And I thought like something I was like looking for was like in the classes as well. Like, are kids like interested in what they do? Like, they're not just like taking these classes and like this might be like what their major is, but like are the classes interesting as well? So I found that like at Yale, I really enjoyed like the classes everyone was taking. Everyone seemed super like into it, but then they also did not seem like super overworked. So I thought that was super appealing to me. And when I visited on campus, it was a little different with COVID, but I was able to see, and it helped me. I think going into before my visits, I was kind of undecided where I wanted to go, and I made my decision pretty much on my visits. So I think it's a huge part. So for me, at least, I really was going in with like a top five schools, and I like pretty even, and I came out like basing it off of my visits. So I think that even if it's just online, like I think visits are super important.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, huge impact, right? Like you showed up going, I don't know, and you left and you were like, yep, that's it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Lily, what was your experience like? And then Tyler, will finish up with you.
Yeah, so I went on a more visits to other colleges than Colorado College. Like I think I haven't been on an official tour at Colorado College yet, even though I'm committed. But I did a whole mix of like official and not official tours. And something that like really stood out to me was like I would sometimes go into schools that were kind of larger, and I had one school that was like very high at the top of my list. I was like, I'd already gotten accepted and I got some aid from them, and so I was like super excited to visit the campus. But I actually went to the campus and we were walking around, and it was an unofficial tour, but it just like clicked how big the campus was and just like how massive of a school that was. And while I was walking around, I just like had a sinking like feeling in my gut that I was like, I don't think this is going to work for me. And so it kind of took being on campus in person for that to kind of register with me, because I'd been to stuff online. But I would say if you at least get like a feel of like a large campus in person and a smaller campus in person, it can really help you narrow down what you want. Even if like you see the buildings for other schools and stuff online, it would just took that like walking the campus in person for me to figure out, oh, I want like a much smaller school with like a kind of like tighter community.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tyler, finish this off. What were your campus visits like?
I mean, I agree with, I think, what everyone else has said. Kind of the main thing is being able to go in person really helps you get a sense of what the campus is actually like and if that's a good fit for you or not.
Mhm.
I think one thing also that kind of like I noticed and paid a lot of attention to is kind of, I guess, like each individual school's kind of quirks and unique bits of campus culture. I think kind of the unique facets like a really set it apart, like set a school apart, can help you determine if it's going to be a good fit for you or not. Just as that campus culture, and are you going to enjoy, spending 4 or more years on that campus?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and something that sometimes students don't realize is that demonstrated interest is a really important part of the application process. So like showing the school that you really like them and that if they admitted you, that you would go, right? Because colleges want as many students, they're counting on you to be able to come. They're like trying to make the calculation of, is this student actually going to come, or are they just getting an acceptance because we're their safety school, right? So you want to be able to show that you really like them a lot. And one of the best ways of doing that in the past has been going to the school. And they're also giving you all the answers to the why do you want to go to this school question on the application, right? Like if you go, you're able to see, oh, I really want to go to this school because of this, because of that. Awesome. So we sort of brushed upon it, but let's talk about what it's like being a recruited athlete. So Ellie, you are a recruited soccer athlete, and Timmy, you are obviously going to be going for rowing. I'd love to know a little bit about how that detail played a role in your search. Like sort of at what point did you think, oh, I think that I want to go the recruited route? And sort of like what did you take into consideration when you were making that decision? So let's go Ellie first and then Timmy.
Yeah, so I've been playing soccer my whole life, so I don't think there was ever a plan in my mind where I wasn't going to play in college. But it was definitely like the big part of my process. Typically for like girls soccer, you start kind of thinking about recruiting like summer going into your junior year. And from there, like you kind of want to decide like D1, D3, location, like conferences, all that stuff. And for me personally, like I was more interested in smaller schools and having more academic focus. So like for me, D3 was an option that seemed like more balanced for me and something that was more intriguing just because of the schools I was already kind of interested in. And recruiting was really tough for me. A lot of recruiting happens junior year, and we were still pretty much in COVID. So that was pretty hard just because a lot of communication had to be done like online, like showcases for us. There was live stream. There weren't many coaches like in person watching you. So that was definitely something that was more challenging than usual. But still, like a big part of it was just constant communication and outreach. You have to do a lot of work for yourself, and it's easy to kind of get sidetracked with maybe like how your teammates are doing in their process or getting caught up in, who's recruiting you and who's not. But I think it's really important to just remember what you're looking for and what's going to work for you, because it won't be the same for your teammate or another person you might know who's also being recruited for your sport. So that was something that was really important.
Yeah, absolutely. Timmy, same experience, different experience?
Yeah, it was pretty similar experience, same kind of timeline. I started rowing in like 8th grade, and like I always like wanted to continue it like through college. So I was never like I was never really unsure about that. I was definitely unsure like at some points whether it was gonna like work out. Like before like I started, like I was like is this gonna be possible? But definitely get into it like Ellie said, it's just like a lot you gotta like reach out a lot. It's a lot of work you have to do to, but it's definitely worth it. It's definitely doable, and it is easy to get caught up like with what like your teammates are doing, what other people are doing. So I'd say like make sure like you are doing the recruiting for yourself and not like for anyone else, and you're not like using other people as like your teammates. You're not like being like, oh, they're talking to this coach, like is that like am I doing something wrong? And I think for my process, overall is just like making sure I'm updating coaches. Like that was a huge part. And then like I said, as I started narrowing down my list of just coaches and like which schools were interested, that helped me narrow down like which schools I wanted to go to like academically. And then over the summer, like going into senior year is when I really started narrowing down to like 5 schools, just based off like offers and like where I wanted to be for the next 4 years. And then like with with COVID, like standardized tests are a little weird, but like finishing off my junior year, like I think like that definitely helped me, even though like tests were test optional. A lot of schools, like it's hard to say what's really test optional. So I think my like SAT and stuff like helped me in my recruiting process as well a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a different atmosphere than it was a couple of years ago. I mean, obviously test optional has taken the world by storm, as it should have. When all those tests were canceled, what are you going to do? But it's definitely interesting how it's affected recruiting, because in the past, sometimes students would say like, I talked to the coach and there's a cutoff. And if I don't get this particular score, then it's just not going to happen. And we're kind of in a different place now, which is really interesting. Fantastic. And Lily, I know you are also an athlete, track and field, something that I can only dream with my huffing and puffing anytime I had to run the mile in high school. But you're going a different route. You're not necessarily going to be, running competitively when you're in college. Do you see, was thinking about being an athlete like part of your college choice? Were you looking for places that had a strong track and field team that you could walk on, or was it sort of like, that was for high school and now I'm gonna go do other things?
Yeah, so I love running. And I think I always will. It's definitely like a lifelong sport. But I kind of decided I didn't really want to do it in college, and like I want to run on my own. But when I was looking at colleges, because I knew I didn't want to do like a D3 sport or, God forbid anything higher than that. But I was looking at a lot of intramural teams and how strong those programs were. Because like a lot of schools have like really good like sports teams or like D1 and D3 teams. But if that's like their only focus, then there's not a ton of like other fun stuff to do. So I was looking especially for like schools that had like extensive like intramural programs and had like fun things to do, like not just like, your like same old sports. But I know like my school has like some fun like broom ball and stuff like that I think would just be fun to like kind of get involved in a community or something kind of new, just kind of spice it up a little bit. Yeah.
Well, now I definitely want to know all about broom ball, but we probably don't have time to get into it. But if someone pops a Q&A question about broom ball in the Q&A, what can I do? I'll have to ask about it. Awesome. All right. So I was wondering if we could reflect a little on the applications themselves. So Tyler, this question's for you. Was there anything that surprised you about the application? Anything that you thought would be harder than it was or easier than it was?
I think I went in to the application process thinking, I don't want to do all this writing because writing is not my strong suit. And still, I think I underestimated the writing. I think with the essays, kind of no matter the school, whether they have a lot of essays or, shorter essays, you still have to, it's a lot of work because, obviously more essays, more writing. But even the shorter ones, because then it becomes, I only have, let's say 500 words. I need to make them all count. How can I best express that I think this is the college for me? Or, answer whatever the prompt is in that limited amount of space. And so for me, writing was the grueling process. I got started with it early and then just kind of slowly worked through it, which I think is, if anyone else's writing is not their strong suit, I'd recommend it, because then you kind of can at least avoid having too much overlap with the school year. You try and get as much done over the summer, then you don't, in a sense, have to deal with the double stress of school writing and college writing.
Oh yeah, because they do not take it easy on you in senior year. Yeah. Was there anything you thought would be easier than it was? Or was it was you thought it was going to be tough and then you were correct?
Yeah. There wasn't really anything I thought was gonna be super easy. I mean, I think part of it was I have an older sister and she's 2 years my senior. So I was, I kind of saw her working through this and I knew the process would be not a total cakewalk. It was a bit different for me. She got in somewhere ED and I waited, I was in regular decision. So that was a bit different. The waiting game definitely is not fun, I will say, especially seeing your classmates be like, oh, I got in December. I only had to submit 2 applications. And then, oh, I had to submit 14 and it's March and I still don't know where I'm going. So I think that's something that I didn't even think about as an issue, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were chatting a little bit before we got started about how I personally, my college journey was a little unorthodox. I got in off the wait list at what I thought was my favorite school, and then I decided not to go. So I didn't actually 100%, yes, I'm committed and I'm super excited until I don't know, July before I went to college. I knew I was going to go there, but I didn't actually 100% go, no, I don't want to get off the wait list at that school. So it may have felt like it took forever for you, Tyler, but it could have been worse. You could have been as indecisive as I was. Lily, I saw some nodding from you. Anything about the college application process that you thought would be harder, or you thought would be easier?
Yeah, so I'm also not a big writer. So that was probably the roughest part of my applications. Especially because I applied to a bunch of liberal arts schools and they all required a bunch of writing. And so the best thing I found to do with that was to kind of compare all of the questions for the writing and make sure that if you have, I had a bunch of schools where you could choose what prompt you wrote out of 5 options or something like that. And so for a lot of those, they had similar overlapping ones. I know I wrote an essay about what TED talk I would give, and I used that for 3 different schools. So if you can find that really cut down on just the number of essays I wrote, or else I would have been even more swamped than I already was. But yeah, I wish I started my writing a lot earlier than I did. And everyone told me to do it and I didn't listen. But that's definitely the way to go, is to start it early and be strategic about when you start writing. Which that was the advice I did take, and that was very helpful.
Mm-hmm. So that you were strategic in how you write?
Yeah. I didn't start as early as I should have, but I didn't write more essays than I needed to.
So you weren't duplicating efforts?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got one core essay that you're oh, I really like how this worked, then you can make a little tweaks. Well, it could be like this, it could be like that, just shove things around a little bit.
Yeah, I actually ended up writing an essay for a prompt for a different school, and then I liked that essay so much that I changed my Common App essay to that essay after already applying to one school, because I was just oh, I didn't even think about writing about this, but it's great, and I thought it really showed my personality. So you can do that too.
Yeah, that's awesome. What a great thing to recognize. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we've got a question in the Q&A. So what do you mean start writing early? Give us an idea of the timeline. So let's a quick lightning poll. Think about, if you can, dredge it back in your memory. When do you think you actually started writing your essays, and when do you think it would have been better for you to have started writing your essays? So Lily, just because we were just talking about this, when were people telling you that you should start writing?
People were telling me I should start writing them the summer before senior year, because you do get super swamped with work.
Mhm.
And I did not. I had 3 early action deadlines, and I started writing those essays, and the rest of my deadlines were regular decision, so I didn't start writing those until like later. But I didn't start writing my early action ones until probably late August, September, which was, I think, a little late.
All right. Tyler, when did you start writing your essays, and when do you wish you could have started writing them?
So I started probably, I think, my used to be early July-ish, which I think is very early. And honestly, I would say might have honestly been a little too early for some of it, because I think especially with last year, colleges were really late about updating their prompts. And so most of the time this was fine. They changed them very little. But there was one school I remember in particular where I wrote a rough draft of my essays, and then I checked again like a week later, and they'd updated them for the new cycle, completely different prompts. So all my work was useless. I ended up in a kind of fit of spite, didn't apply to the school over the essays. I also figured I wouldn't get in. But so I would say, I think in a normal year, early July is probably, I think, the earliest you could probably go. And I think at least I was not the most efficient writer. So I think if people, in a sense, if you start then and work efficiently, you can definitely be done, or almost done by the time your school starts.
All right. Well, I hope that college is listening and they realize what they lost out on by not changing their prompts in a timely manner. That had to be so frustrating. All right, Timmy and then Ellie, thinking about when did you actually start writing your essays, and when do you wish you'd started writing your essays?
So I started probably end of August, and I think for me, I think I maybe even started a little early because I knew I was only gonna have to do one application. So I kind of did my Common App essay like end of August, early September, and then like mid-September, when I narrowed it down to the one school I was gonna go to, I just started filling out the their supplemental questions and finishing up my my Common App essay as well. And then I applied like in, I think, October, like 1st was the earliest I could do it because I got like likely letter stuff. So I think my timeline, I was happy with it because it didn't feel too rushed, and maybe even if it was a little early because I started like procrastinating, and I know when I procrastinate it means I probably took a little like too much time. So
yeah. Or it's like sometimes you do better when you're like, okay, I know the deadline's coming and it's soon enough that I really do need to start working on it.
Yeah.
So a hint that I would give to anyone who's watching is to create mini deadlines for yourself so that you still get the feeling of, oh gosh, I need to get this done by this time. But like you're breaking it into like little chunks, as opposed to, I need to have all of my essays done in 3 months from now, sort of tricking yourself into creating that feeling. Speaking as a massive procrastinator myself, I'm right there with you, Timmy. All right, and last but not least, Ellie, writing. When did it actually happen? When do you wish it happened?
I was lucky. I had verbally committed to Dickinson in August, so I knew like going into the school year that I only needed to apply to one school, which was really nice. I had at junior year with like our college counselors, we had done some like writing seminars where we kind of just for like the Common App essay, we had brainstormed like things we would want to write about. So I think having like doing something over the summer like that is really helpful for me going into the school year because we already had those ideas working in our mind, so it was harder to procrastinate with our writing. So I think doing something like that over the summer, because that Common App essay is like what will go to every school. So like knowing what you want a school to really have, like what you want a school to know about you is really important, but it's also kind of nerve-wracking because you're like, what do I want them to know? And it's also tricky because of like the word counts and stuff, like every word does count. So definitely going into senior year, kind of having an idea of what that special thing about you, or I don't know, like something you've done, part of your personality, I don't know, whatever you want that college to know about you, I think it's good to brainstorm that, because it definitely helped me not to procrastinate Common App essay.
It's tough. It's tough. Procrastination is so hard. All right. So switching over to what could have been. So this is a really great question in the Q&A. So is there anything you wish you had done differently now that you're on the other side of the process? You figured out what you've got your sweatshirt, literally in some cases here tonight. You've got the sticker on the back of your car. You know what mascot you're cheering for. Is there any advice that you would give your younger self, right? If you could get a do-over, what would you do differently? I'd love to hear from each of you. Let's start with Timmy. Is there anything you'd like to have done differently, or was it just like perfect from start to finish?
Definitely wasn't perfect. I think I probably would have told like myself before, like the whole process and like recruiting, just to like just relax a little bit, because I think, and not worry so much, because I think I got caught up a lot of like, is recruiting going to work out? Like, am I like fast enough like for rowing, like to be recruited? Like, are my scores and like grades like good enough for like this school? So it's like, it is hard, I feel like, to find like an exact list, like you need this and this and this and you'll be fine, like to get into these certain schools. So I think like just kind of trusting the process a little more. I think I would have told my younger self, and like making sure like you get the things you need to get done and not worried about like the external factors, like the stuff you can't really control.
Absolutely. I think especially the last couple of years have showed us that there's a lot that we can't control. So yeah, giving yourself a little space on that. Absolutely. Let's see, Tyler and then Ellie.
For me, it's a pretty big kind of mistake on my part. Is I regret not applying ED. I'm pretty sure that I wanted to go to Rice. That Rice was where I wanted to go. But then part of me was like, oh, but what if, maybe this and that could be really good. And I should have, in a sense, not done been stupid for lack of a term. I should have just gone with my gut. I knew Rice was where I'd be happiest. It's an amazing school, and I should have just applied ED. And luckily it all worked out in the end. But I mean, like you mentioned earlier, designated interest is a big thing. And so being able to have that binding commitment that you'll go means a lot to colleges. And so I would personally wish I would have applied ED. Hopefully also would have gotten, an acceptance earlier. So it would have saved me a couple months of kind of being stressed about stuff. So I think just my advice would be kind of, if you find a school that is kind of has everything you want and it's where you'd be the happiest, apply ED. Don't hesitate on the what ifs. Just be kind of decisive with it.
Mm-hmm. As a fellow indecisive person, I feel you. All right, Ellie.
Yeah, kind of what Timmy was saying, just kind of like in terms of recruiting, it was very stressful a lot. Especially, it's just like a very competitive environment in terms of recruiting, because all of your like teammates and everyone are kind of, wanting those same spots in those teams. So I think just like trusting the process, obviously, is easier said than done. But I think just having confidence in yourself and knowing like what you're looking for, because it's not going to be the same for everyone, just knowing that you're on your own path was something that like I wish I told myself more, because I think that it would have made my process a little less stressful if I wasn't comparing myself to everyone. Yeah, and I also just think that in terms of just what Tyler was saying, like if you know you're going to be happy at a school, like if it meets all the things or most of the things that you're looking for, like nothing should stop you from applying.
Oh, yeah, comparison is so tempting, I think, right? Especially because social media feels like you're just comparing yourself to everybody else's highlight reel. And it can be really hard to remember that, like, for everything that's positive that you're seeing, there's also some negatives that they're just not choosing to share with everybody. So it's tough. All right, Lily, thoughts? What would you tell your younger self about applying?
I would definitely tell myself to chill out. Yeah, pretty much what everyone was saying. I was super nervous and like kind of constantly doubting myself and like freaking myself out about, not getting in anywhere. And yeah, it was just like not realistic, like somebody's gonna want you, it's gonna be okay, things are gonna work out. Um that and I wish I had applied more places early action. Since I started a little late on my essays, there were some schools I could have applied early action to, but ended up going regular decision to. And I wish I kind of applied early action just to see what would happen. Um, yeah, and that I think you just kind of get your stuff over with a little bit earlier, and it would have saved a lot of like stress and waiting and stuff like that. But yeah, overall, not like unhappy with how things went.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Uh, wonderful. So let's talk about majors. We've got a very, in general, STEM heavy bunch of people, a lot of pre-meds in this group, and which is really, to me, very admirable and exciting. As I told all of you, was super undeclared when I went into college. I knew I just wanted to take like as many different classes as I could possibly get away with. And I got into an honors college, so I didn't have any gen ed requirements. So I could just go bonkers and take really weird stuff, just because I wanted to like try out as much as I possibly could. But this group is pretty focused. So I'd love to know, how did you all do it? How did you figure out what you wanted to major in? What inspired you? I'm gonna start with Tyler, because he's got a very specific goal, but he's also got very varied interests, including the humanities. I'd love to know what made you realize, I love astrophysics, I want to think about that a lot.
So for me, it was kind of, I've known at least vaguely what I wanted to do for a long time, ever since really like first grade. With like at my school for Cub Scouts, we did a trip to the Kennedy Space Center, and so there was like I kind of was exposed to space, aerospace engineering, and so for the longest time I wanted to do aerospace engineering. I thought, this is it, I'm going to do it, and for 10 years that's what I wanted to do. And then kind of right before really I started applying and making my list, my college counselor was like, really, whenever I talk to you, it seems like all the passion is more about the science and listed like the engineering kind of design aspect of it. And I realized they were right. And so I kind of made that shift from looking at the engineering side to more the science side of astronomy and astrophysics. And then, when I found Rice and I looked at it, and they had an astrophysics major, which kind of fit everything I wanted, which is, kind of that same study, and then leading into, hopefully going on to grad school. And so it kind of was a perfect match for me.
Awesome. All right, let's see. Lily, how did you know that you were really interested in pre-med with an art minor?
So I like throughout high school have been like very interested in biology. I took biology freshman year and I like loved the class. And so I immediately started like doing all of these like clubs for like the biology club, the medical youth society, and like just kind of getting involved in everything I could at school. And that's some advice I have for people is, if you think you might be interested in something, try a club out. I tried clubs out and it turned out that I really did like it and I was really interested in it. And I knew that even though I wanted to go pre-med, I didn't want to like not study anything else. So I knew I wanted to go to a liberal arts school or somewhere where I would have to like force myself to like get out of my comfort zone and like study some interesting like topics that were kind of, out of my, like not what am used to. And I've always been super interested in art, and I knew I wanted to have like often I can get like super zoned in on like sciencey stuff, and I wanted to be able to give myself the break if I was going pre-med, to like force myself to take time to do something I really, really love and get better at something I really love. So that's where the art minor came in. I was just like, I want to make sure that I take these classes because I love it, and I don't get like too like into only taking science courses once I fill my general requirements.
Awesome. Yeah. Speaking as someone who was an English and drama major and somehow managed to end up in poli-sci and history classes an awful lot. I think you'll have a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I love the idea of like trying out clubs, right? Like figuring out, is this something I really want to spend time with? I think that's a really great idea. Ellie and Timmy, you're both sort of like, you've got two paths. Ellie's thinking pre-med or psychology. Timmy's thinking psychology or sociology. So sort of how are you thinking about like maybe narrowing it down, or what is it like to not maybe necessarily know exactly what you want to do, but you're going for it anyway? Let's do Ellie and then Timmy.
Yeah, so I'm still pretty like undecided in terms of my major, and I think that was also something that drew me to like the liberal arts like schools. That was something that I focused on a lot. Just like with the way that liberal arts education kind of emphasizes more diversity in what you do and what classes you take. That's something that's really what I was looking for. So I think like going in like to my freshman year next year, I have like a couple things I'm interested in, which I might try to like do more like focus on, but I'm also open to other things. And I think that's something that I'm okay with, just because I know that's kind of how my school is designed to open you to new interests, but also help you focus on stuff you're already interested in. I think it just provides a good balance. So it's also like not a bad thing if you're not decided on a major. Like I think that's also something that I wish more people had told me. Like you don't need to be decided going into college, because I mean at 18 it's not necessary for you to know what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I think if you go in with that, I mean obviously it's good to have things that you're really interested in, but if you're not, that's not a bad thing, and that's kind of what college is for. So don't get too caught up if you really aren't like sure what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Timmy, any thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'm really not too decided. Like I said, I'm interested in like psychology and sociology, but my plan is just to go in, look at the prerequisites I need to meet for like my freshman year, and look at classes that like fall into those prereqs and what are just interesting to me, and not really like focusing on one general area, because I agree with Ellie. Like I don't think anyone like needs to be if they don't know like what they want to do with the rest of their life. Like it's like I respect and I think it's super cool for the people that do, but like I think it's totally okay if you don't know. And I think my plan is just to go in, like take the classes that are interesting to me, and like see like what I really want to do with the rest of my life, and go from there. Because I think right now I really don't know what's super interesting to me yet. So I'm excited to see.
I'm excited for you. It's so awesome being able to just sort of try out random things just because you're there in college and that's what it's all about. Wonderful question from Marina. How did the cost of attendance factor into your college list and decisions? I know Lily mentioned scholarships and sort of thinking about money and how much a college was able to offer. But if anyone has any thoughts on the cost and how that sort of helped you compile your list. Lily, if you wouldn't mind, I'll just sort of throw you into the fire, and we only have about 10 minutes left. So if anyone's waiting on a question that they're not sure about, just pop it into the Q&A and we'll see if we have time to get it answered. All right, Lily.
Yeah, so I'm like very fortunate in the fact that my parents, you know, like were well off, and my parents said that they're gonna help me with college and stuff. So they've always told me to prioritize fit over everything else. And so that was something that I've been like super fortunate to have. Um, Going in, I was like when I was thinking about aid, I knew most of my aid would probably come from merit. So when I like, it wasn't the first priority at the top of my list, but I definitely kind of picked out some schools that I thought would give me merit. So for me, looking at schools that would give me merit would generally be just like a little bit below my SAT range, but like definitely focus on stuff I was passionate about. So I applied to University of Vermont and University of Colorado Boulder, and both of those were like a little bit, their average SAT ranges were a little bit below where mine were, but both of them had like great outdoors programs, great like pre-med and bio programs. So I knew that like when I was looking there, I would be super happy going there, and that even if you are like a little bit above SAT ranges and stuff, that gives you like a good opportunity for merit. But also I got accepted into the honors college at CU Boulder, so that's always an option, and that's a good way to get merit and still be in like a very like top level program and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that was my experience with it.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in?
I think one thing is, and I'm luckily in a similar situation to Lily, where like my parents are helping me out with college, and so fit kind of was the main thing. But in Florida, we have what's something called Bright Futures, which is essentially if you meet certain the standardized test requirements, and there are some graduation requirements as well. If you meet those, you can go to any Florida school and you get full ride. Just all, if you are admitted and you attend, your entire tuition is paid for. And so, while obviously I'm not attending a Florida school now, but you know, when I wasn't sure, I definitely made sure to fill that out. And so I'd say, you know, anyone in Florida, definitely do Bright Futures. It's an amazing program. And even if you don't qualify for like the top full ride, I mean, there's still, you know, get a portion of it paid for. It's a great program. So I'd just say, you know, regardless of where you are, I think just trying to look for some opportunities like that where you can do, you know, potentially no extra work and you can still get money to help pay for college.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll for anyone who's interested in some good scholarship search tools, I would recommend, there's a lot of people use FastWeb, but if you do that, I would advise creating an email address that is just for FastWeb, because you can get a lot of really spammy responses. So, you know, you could just set up like Jenna Burke goes to college at gmail.com and put that in there, so you're not, you know, wading through a lot of email you don't want to deal with. There's also Going Merry, which tries to do for scholarship searches what the Common App has done for college applications. So the Common App, if you're not aware, is a common application form for that a lot of colleges accept. So Going Merry has a common application forms that for a bunch of scholarships that will accept one form. So instead of having to fill out scholarship form after scholarship form, you can fill out one and try to hit a whole bunch at once. There's also Merit Scholarship List, which an educational consultant has put together for school-based scholarships that are often based on GPA or SAT or ACT test scores. So if a school has a particular scholarship that you might qualify for without even knowing, that can be a really helpful one. Let's see. Okay, a couple other questions. Creating your college list. So how many sort of top level colleges, or like, let's call them like reaches or ones that you were sort of crossing your fingers and toes about, versus how many in your range or slightly below? Like, how did you sort of figure out how many you were going to have in each category? Let's see. Anyone feel brave and want to just jump right on in?
I'll go for it.
Tyler, yeah, go for it.
So I would say for the reaches, I think kind of the main deciding factor is, frankly, how many you can take, how many essays can you write and go through, because even if your chance is, let's say only have a 10% chance of getting in, and obviously, anyone who knows statistics is going to kill me, but if you apply to 10 schools with a 10% acceptance rate, that's 100%. So you should get in somewhere. Obviously that's not how statistics work. Do not cite me if unfortunately that does not work out for you. But point is, if you can apply, if you have the energy to apply to a lot of reach schools that you're interested in, go for it. But I definitely make sure you have a couple solid options that you are pretty confident or or 100% sure you're going to get into, so that if those reaches don't pan out, you still have somewhere you're very happy with that you can go in the fall.
I tutored Tyler, and I think Tyler knows that adding up 10% does not always give you 100. I think that math's a little sus, but I won't give you too hard of a time. Anybody else? Any thoughts about college lists?
Yeah.
Please.
I'll go, just because the school I'm going to is a little bit of a reach for me. They have last year they had like a 14% acceptance rate. But I applied ED2, and so that was a way for me to kind of beat the odds on it, because a lot of schools are like much more inclined to take you if you apply ED1 or ED2. And so that's, if you're looking at reach schools and you're really into one of your reach schools and you're like really thinking about it, you can apply one of those and it increases your chances by a lot. And I was actually waitlisted at my school. I applied early action. I was waitlisted and I did some more research in the school. I decided I really, really liked it, really wanted to go. And I applied ED2, which is binding. And the odds of getting off of the wait list, if you are like, or the odds of like getting in like regular are like 3.5% if you're like going in regular decision. I did a little research. But if you're going in ED2 is 30.5%. And I know my stats of getting off the wait list if I went ED2 were 50%. So it like increases your odds a lot if you like decide that even if it's a reach school, you really want to like commit to it. You should just try your best. You can commit to it, and you're much more likely to get it.
Awesome. All right, we've got like 2 minutes left. So really quick lightning round. Let's go Timmy, Lily, Ellie, Tyler. Any last thoughts? Anything you would like to tell the students who are watching you right now, getting ready to go on their own college application journey? What would you want to tell them, Timmy?
What I would say, and what I would also say again to my future or my past self, is just enjoy it. Like, it's like, especially with recruiting, it's really cool to be able to like apply to all these like schools and like talk to coaches in the recruiting case. But just like to go through that process, it's not going to go through a process like that again, and you got to like write a lot about yourself. And I found like I kind of learned more about myself as I was like writing all these like supplementary essays and stuff. So I think just enjoy it. It's maybe stressful, but you'll look back on it and it'll be a good process.
Absolutely. All right, Lily.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing. Kind of just, it'll work itself out. It'll work out. Work hard, but don't stress too much. Yeah. Do your essays early. That's about it.
I think that's one good takeaway I think we can all agree on. All right, except for Tyler and the school that shall not be named. Ellie.
Yeah, I would just say like be like honest with yourself and what you're looking for and stay true to that, and that will really help you. And just like apply to schools that you would want to go to for the next 4 years of your life, not just because it has a great name or it is close to where you live, something like that. Just apply to a school that you would really be able to see yourself at for the next 4 years.
Yeah, I really like the idea of like not lying to yourself about like what you actually want. Like, it's okay if like your parents want you to go someplace with a campus and you really want to go to like a bustling city, because you're the one who's going to be there. Absolutely. And Tyler, finish us off.
I'm just gonna say, go where you think you're gonna be the happiest. Doesn't matter in a sense, what your parents or what you think your classmates are gonna think. If they think you think your school isn't good enough or whatever. If it's where you fit in and you think it's the best fit for you, then it's the right choice. It's the right school, and kind of be confident in that. Be decisive. And I mean, if you're sure you want to go there, apply ED because like Lily said, it's gonna help your chances. So kind of be confident and go where you think you're gonna be happiest, not where you think it'll make everyone else the happiest, because you're the one who's gonna have to be there for 4 years.
I love that. I think that is a wonderful one to go out on. Just a quick reminder to anyone who is tuning in, who's interested in this series that we've got going on. We've got a lot of really wonderful webinars that are coming up. We've got one, I believe, on the 25th that's coming up with Dr. Jed Appleruth, our wonderful founder. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and sign up for our Pathway to College webinars. It's going to be next Wednesday at 8 p.m. with the wonderful and amazing Jed. He'll be talking about setting a testing timeline and starting test prep, planning to make the most of your summer, visiting colleges, both in person and online, and asking teachers and counselors for recommendations. So thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Thank you again to all of my amazing panelists. It was really wonderful hearing about all of your experiences, and I wish you all the best on your next step of your journey into college. Thank you all so much.